tax-free for them. They can gather up money, send out a mailing, and there's going to be lunatics that'll send them a fortune. The record industry, if it wants to hold its head high, has got to invest some cash to fight this. But I doubt whether they will.
Do you think what happened in, was it 85, by even voluntarily entering in with the PMRC to voluntarily label that was a bad first step?
Absolutely. They should have fought them tooth and nail from the day they first got the PMRC letter. They should have told these people, go stuff it. You got no business meddling in my affairs. You're not a government agency. We don't need to hear about your concerns. Your concerns are worthless. It's a sham. It's just another piece of fundamentalist frogwash. Get out of my face. That's what they should have done, and they should have just given them the finger and walked away. But no. They had two pieces of legislation that they were trying to protect in the Congress. One was H.R. 2911, the blank tape tax, and the other one was this anti-piracy bill. In the case of the blank tape tax, if they could have got the Congress to pass that, they would have picked up $250 million a year in found money, and it would have been collected for them by the U.S. government. They would be in this weird partnership with the IRS collecting in advance this special cash, and the bulk of it would have gone to the record companies, not to the artist. The thing was designed to be distributed on a 90-10 split. 90% to the record companies, 10% to the artist. The government would collect it for them, and it was like a dream come true for the record industry. They weren't going to throw that away. And they knew that the husbands of these ladies in the PMRC sat on the committees that would be hearing their legislation, and so they played footsie with them. And on November 1, 85, they signed an agreement saying they would voluntarily label records. This is not news. This happened in 85. But on October 30th, 1985, was when the blank tape tax got its first hearing in the Congress.
No coincidence.
Yes.
So hindsight's 20/20, but a tactical error that set up what's happening now, you think?
Absolutely. And I think that when the decision was made to bend over, all these smart guys, the executives in the record company, said, hey, it's not our problem. What are we giving up? What do we care whether the free speech rights of some stupid artist is curtailed by this? There's $250 million a year in free money coming in the door. If we can do this, aren't we smarter and more prudent and better businessmen if we just say screw the artist and go for the money? And they all shook hands and nodded and, snorted their cocaine and went on their merry way. That's what happened. Artists, they're a dime a dozen. You have to get rid of one, there's another one coming in the door. There's plenty of artists out there, each one with a better hairdo, each one with more leather, more studs, each one cuter, each one looking more like a girl. Okay? They had the whole thing figured out. There was going to be no problem for them because they were giving up no rights. They were giving up the rights of a third party.
Well, monkey wrenches abound now, and even though they temporarily beat them in most states right now, except for Louisiana, which is still pending, and the threat of it all looms large to come back and haunt again. And a lot of it now is detailing, a lot of bills detail something about S for satanic, substance abuse for records like that. Who's going to do that?
That's what the PMRC started off with. They had an 8-point rating system: O for occult, X for sex, and on and on and on. They had this multiple rating system, and at the Senate hearing, they gave up on all that and just asked for a generic rating. But now these Christian groups are trying to bring that back. When you want to have a satanic rating on a record, first of all, it validates the idea that there is such a thing as a devil. Okay, prove it to me. I believe that once upon a time there was a guy named Jesus, and he was walking around. That's a real guy. A guy with red skin, horns, a long tail, smells like sulfur, has a pointed stick, makes you go to a place where there's fire. That's superstition. And superstition has no place in legislation. So if you create something that says we must protect people from the devil, you're saying that the devil's real, and you got a problem. Because the next step is the witchcraft trials.
Something that was in the Missouri bill, which was temporarily defeated, or hopefully permanently defeated, was the fact that there was civil liability if someone could prove in court that a record caused someone to do something antisocial, whether it's suicide or do whatever. How could a record cause someone to do anything?
If there's any evidence that spoken material has caused people to engage in antisocial activities, the preponderance of evidence is against television evangelists whose followers have committed crimes of an even more serious nature. For example, The guy on the Staten Island ferry who appears with a sword and kills 4 people because Jesus told him to do it. You know, the lunatics in this world are in that camp. They're not the people who listen to heavy metal records or rap records. The sick people are the ones who watch these Christian programs on television. These are the ones that, you know, there ought to be some civil liability there. As a matter of fact, I would suggest liability insurance for the station owner who puts this stuff on the air. Because if they create legislation that says liability based on hearing somebody say something, that could be stretched to the liability for the broadcaster who put the substance, the audio substance, on the air. And if it can be proven that a person has done something bad because he got the information from watching a religious program, and there's more of that, there's a lot more of that to deal with than there is of any kind of teenage suicide from listening to Ozzy Osbourne, I think if they create that law, it could backfire on them.
In a court of law, who would even say that the Ozzy Osbourne song Suicide Solution was about suicide and it told this person to...
That's been to trial, as far as I know, twice, and has been thrown out both times. And they're still whipping the same dead horse. The last time it went to trial was... the claim was that tucked away inside the grooves of the album was a subliminal 11-cycle tone which drove people to these acts. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the human ear functions between 20 cycles and 20,000 cycles on a good day. If you've got perfect hearing, that's what you can hear. Well, as far as I can tell, there is no recording medium that will reproduce an 11-cycle tone. The bandwidth on a CD is 20 to 20.
And not only that, but all of Wilson Bryant Key's work, the guy who wrote The Art of Subliminal Seduction, has never been empirically proven in a test setting. It's just all hypothesis. So how could courts even award civil liability?
How could the Arizona legislature create the dildo law? Remember, not only is the public intellectually impaired because they've gone through the American educational system, guess what? The guy sitting next to you at the desk in that bad school you went to, he's in the legislation business now. I mean, you have people in government who are intellectually unprepared to engage in any high-level human activity. These are basically used car salesmen that got a promotion, or lawyers, which is worse. So you say, how can you do it? Take a look at who's doing it.
It's been a tricky year. What's the next year look like, Frank? It's going to be better?
Not much better.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't think that there's any signal on the horizon that shows me that the American public is going to wake up and smell the coffee here. I think it's going to be, look, isn't that weird? Look what they're doing in Florida. Oh, that dildo law. That sure is strange. You know, oh, okay. You just consume it as entertainment. The news is consumed as entertainment. It doesn't motivate you.
When's the point going to come when people start rebelling?
In America, not.
Sounds pretty bleak.
Well, you asked my opinion. That's my opinion. I can't really see any kind of grassroots rebellion of any description in this country because it's too sedated.
Do you think that's media rhetoric always saying that the next decade is going to be like the 60s and we're going to return to 60s values? What's the future for the 90s? I'm not sure that the 60s values were all that terrific. I mean, they start to look pretty good compared to the 80s and 90s values. But I wouldn't say that the 60s was any kind of a golden age because there were a lot of stupid things that occurred during the 60s. I will say that it is my opinion that the condition that we're in now is bordering on terminal.